on a night out drinking with your friends is something that most people do in their 20s. It's something that most people can relate to. And Jill Meagher was one of these people. She loved going out to bars and clubs with her friends, but on one particular night out in 2012, Jill said goodbye to all of her friends at the end of the night and was never seen alive again. So today's video is going to be another solved true crime case. Today we're going to be talking about the murder of Jill Meagher. But quickly, before we get into this video, I do just want to thank our sponsor for making this video possible, Cctv. You guys already know I am a hardcore Cctv phone case stan. They are the best phone cases in the world, in my opinion. And I'll say that with my chest. So I can't wait to go phone case shopping when my iPhone 14 gets here. It gets here in like a week. And if you're getting the new iPhone 14 as well, you want to make sure it's protected. All of their phone cases have military-grade drop protection. They are drop tested from different heights, and their new iPhone 14 cases are their most protective yet. They've been drop tested over 130 times, and they can be dropped from 11.5 feet in the air. And I know none of you are that tall. I know you're not. But don't worry, the increased protection on these cases doesn't mean they become like big and bulky and ugly. They're still as sleek and slim and sexy as they've always been. And as they always have done, Cctv have so many different gorgeous designs for you to choose from. They have prints, they have different artists on there. Of course, you can also customize your cases. You can upload photos to cases. You can have you can put your name on or whatever else you want to write on a phone case. I also have some of the new Halloween cases here. I'll put in some clips. How cute are these? Cctvi's impact cases and ultra impact cases are all made with 65% recycled and plant-based materials, which I love. I tell you that all the time because that's one of my favorite things about this company is how sustainable they are. They have the compostable cases, which clues in the name, you can compost them. It's great for the environment. And one more thing about the iPhone 14 cases that I forgot to mention, they're all MagSafe compatible, which means you can wireless charge with the case still on, which is great. Gone are the times of having to shell off your case to be able to wireless charge. So whether you're getting the new iPhone 14 or if you just want to treat yourself to a nice new phone case, maybe one of the Halloween ones, I think I'm gonna wear this one. The link is down below. Go to cctv.com/Eleanor. Like I said, the link is in the description. And when you do, a 15% discount will automatically be applied at checkout. Thanks again to Cctv for sponsoring this video. Now, before we get into it, I do just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This video is for educational purposes, and everything that I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. Just a couple of content warnings before we get into this case. There are themes of rape, sexual assault, and kidnap in this case, and a couple of the victims are young teenagers. So if that is something that you don't want to hear about right now, I completely understand. Click out of this video. Hopefully I'll get to see you some other time with a different video, but look after yourself and let's get into the case. So today's case takes place in Brunswick in Australia in 2012, but first let's take it back almost 30 whole years to 1982. October 30th, 1982, Gillian McKeon was born to parents George and Edith in Ireland, actually. So she was born in Ireland, but this case takes place in Australia. This was an Irish woman though. When Jill was a few years old, her parents had another child. She got a baby brother named Michael, so now there were two siblings in this family. They lived in Ireland for a few years, but when Jill was still quite young, her father got a job offer for a promotion over in Perth in Australia, and this was a really, really good promotion, something that he couldn't pass up. And so as a family, they decided to follow this career opportunity, uproot themselves and move all the way to Australia. They were only there for about 5 or 6 years in Perth, and then they ended up moving back to Ireland just in time for Jill to go to high school there. So Jill pretty much grew up in Ireland, although there was a little chunk of her childhood that was spent over in Australia. So it always had a soft spot in her heart. She loved Australia. Jill herself was a very bright, bubbly, upbeat kind of girl. She was really positive, really smiley, really energetic. She loved to perform. She loved to entertain people. By perform, I mean more cracking jokes and stuff like that. I don't know if she was a performer. That's not what I meant. I mean in the way that me and my friends perform for each other. We're putting on stand-up shows for each other. Although she did really love entertaining people. It brought her the most joy ever did like putting a smile on someone's face or making someone laugh. And so she knew that she wanted to go into the entertainment industry as a job one day, but she didn't quite know what field she wanted to do because she wasn't exactly a dancer and she wasn't exactly an actor. And that was when she settled on radio hosting. She felt that that was something that she could be really good at, just like talking and entertaining an audience. So Jill went to university in Dublin and she got a degree in something. I don't actually know what she got a degree in. Something that would lead to a job in radio, I'm sure. And while she was there at university in Dublin, Jill met a wonderful man named Tom Marr, and the two of them just fell head over heels in love with each other. And they were inseparable from then on. They had both found their person, the person that they wanted to spend the rest of their lives with. And so they went through graduation together, they got their first jobs together, they planned to move out together and have babies and get married and just grow old together. Getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. But yeah, they decided that this was it for them. They were for each other. They weren't interested in dating around. So yeah, the two of them graduated and Jill went and got her first job in broadcasting. And then in 2008, Jill and Tom got married, making Jill now Jill Meagher. So now that they're like officially a little family unit, they're still quite young at this point, I think like early 20s, they kind of had a bit of a chat with each other about what they wanted for their lives and for their family, because they wanted to start having kids soon and stuff. And they came to the conclusion that they didn't want to live the rest of their lives in Ireland. They loved it there, they really did, but there's more to the world than just your home country, isn't there? And they wanted to experience more. And for Jill, she had such a soft spot in her heart for Australia, and actually her parents had moved back over there at this point. So there were so many reasons why Australia kind of made the most sense for them to move to. They didn't move anywhere near her parents, actually. Her parents moved back to Perth and they went and got a house in Melbourne, which is on the complete other side of the country. So yeah, the two of them moved to Melbourne and they started setting up their lives there. Jill managed to find a really similar job to the broadcasting one that she'd got back home, so that was great. She was really lucky to get that. I say lucky, she was good. She was good at her job. She was talented. She deserved that job, but she was lucky to find one so quickly, I guess. She worked for ABC, which is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. I'm sure you've heard of them, ABC. She really, really loved this job. She got on so well with all of her co-workers. Like, they were more than just co-workers, they were all friends outside of work as well. And everyone really liked Jill. Like, as soon as she joined, everyone was so impressed by her. Everyone always said that Jill was so good at her job, but there was just something about her that, like, she didn't really realise how good she was at her job. She wasn't cocky or arrogant. She was just very modest and just really good at her job. So everyone really liked her. And she was really, really funny as well. Like I said, when she was in school, she was always cracking jokes. She never changed. She was the exact same at ABC. But yeah, she was really, really close friends with a lot of her co-workers, and they would often go out for drinks together, like straight after work. They would go out because there was like a street of just loads of bars near where they worked. And so on September 21st, 2012, Jill and a bunch of her co-workers did exactly that. They finished their shifts and they went out to this bar street and picked a bar. It was about 5 p.m. and the first bar they made their way to was called the Brunswick Green. And this was a bit more like pub vibes, I think. They started the night there, had a few drinks there, and then they later went down the road to a bar called Bar Etiquette. And this one was a little bit more like night out vibes. Shortly after going to the second bar, Jill texted her husband Tom saying, "Oh, come meet us at the bar. We're all at the bar. We're all having a great time. You should come." But he was already asleep, so he never saw this text. The night continued. Jill thought, oh, he's just busy, or he's asleep. And so the night just continued. She's having more drinks with her friends. It's a really good night. And then it gets to about 1:30 a.m. and the group decide that it's time for home. They all said their goodbyes there outside the bar, and then they all, set off in their different directions home. And there was one other co-worker that was going in Jill's direction, so they walked to the end of the road together, and this other co-worker then hailed a cab to take him home. He jumped in the cab and he offered Jill a lift home as well. He was like, "Oh, we can stop and drop you off on the way if you want." But Jill actually turned it down because she lived quite a short walk away from the bar, to be honest. She felt like she would just be inconveniencing the driver. It was a short walk and it would be an even shorter drive, so there was no point really. So she turned it down, said thank you, but no, thank you. And she said that she was fine walking home. So this co-worker drives off in the cab and Jill sets off on her walk home alone. A couple of hours later, Jill's husband Tom wakes up in the middle of the night and he turns over and his wife's still not home. She's still not in bed. So he grabs his phone and he tries to call her, but she doesn't pick up. So he texts her a couple of times just asking where she was and is she all right and all this. He waits for a response. He's not getting one, and so he tries to ring again. She doesn't pick up still. As time's going on, he's getting more and more worried. He can't sleep at this point because he doesn't know where his wife is or if she's okay. He keeps trying to phone every now and again, but she's not picking up. She's not texting back or anything. Eventually, it got to a point where Tom felt like he couldn't just sit around and wait any longer. He was worried. He was concerned about his wife. By now, it was about 4 a.m. She should have been home. She never really stayed out this late. He was so worried, in fact, that he got up, got dressed, and at 4 a.m., he went out into the streets looking for his wife. Luckily, she'd texted him earlier in the night saying, "We're at Bar Etiquette, come to Bar Etiquette." So he knew exactly where to go. He walked all the way to Bar Etiquette and took the route home that she would have taken, but he couldn't see her anywhere. The whole time he's still calling, texting her, getting no response. He's walking like all over town at this point. He'd done the route, couldn't find her, so he just kept walking and walking and walking. And by 6 a.m, morning's starting to break, it's starting to get light outside, and Tom knows that he needs to report Jill as missing. So police came down to chat with Tom about the whole situation, and they quickly established that Jill's phone must have run out of battery because it was just going straight to voicemail now when Tom was calling it. Like I said, it was morning, so all of Jill's friends and family are now waking up, and they've all got loads of texts and missed calls from Tom, who had been ringing around everyone he knew, asking them if they knew where Jill was. So this was like the first thing that her family heard as soon as they woke up, was that Jill was missing. So immediately they all get in touch with Tom, they all go down to meet him, and they're all joining in the searches first thing in the morning. A few of them sit back at the house and they're posting on social media. One of them made a Facebook page called Help Find Jill Meagher. They're making missing persons posters to like post on social media. They were printing out the posters, posting them up around town. They were really putting in a shift already as soon as they woke up, because this was so out of character for Jill that they knew that something was wrong. It wasn't like they were putting in all this effort and then she would just like walk through the door and she'd just been on a crazy night out. That wasn't like Jill. So for her to not be in contact for this long, they knew that this was serious. Just circling back to that Facebook page that I mentioned, that Facebook page within a week of this investigation had actually hit 100,000 likes on Facebook in 2012. So that's big. That's getting ahead of ourselves a bit. Let's go back to the morning that the investigation started. One of the first things that police did in this investigation was go and speak to all of Jill's work colleagues that she'd been out at the bar with that night. But none of them really had that much information that they could give police, because Jill was fine when they all left her. She was fine walking home on her own. So it was clear to police that whatever had happened to Jill Meagher had happened to her on her walk home that night. That same morning, police sent out a bunch of officers to manually search the area, the whole route home that she would have taken, to see if they could find anything of interest. But there was nothing. They couldn't find anything, and days were going by and she was still missing, and there was nothing. There were no leads to go on because no one saw anything. It was literally like she vanished into thin air on that walk home. There was nothing that police could even really investigate. Well, actually, one of the things that they automatically did in the beginning of this investigation was look into her husband Tom as a potential person of interest, because they always do. Police always look into the husband, the boyfriend, the ex, whoever is the romantic interest in the person that is missing's life. They're a suspect. They're immediately a suspect just by the relationship. But as soon as police called Tom in for a questioning, they realised that he was being genuine. Like, he had nothing to do with this. He was genuinely a really, really worried husband. He had a really solid alibi, and so he was ruled out as a suspect. All of her co-workers that she'd been drinking with all had an alibi to say that they got home, so they were all ruled out as suspects. That being said, actually, even though police had ruled out her husband Tom as a suspect, there was always a little subculture online that really had this like conspiracy theory against Tom. They really believed that he was responsible for whatever had happened to Jill. They would post things saying that like they felt the police weren't looking into him enough, and it was convenient that he was the one that discovered her missing and stuff like that, you know? It was just armchair detectives getting involved where they weren't really needed. Police had already publicly said that he was ruled out as a suspect, but I don't know, it's just nosy people being nosy and having theories, isn't it? 3 days into the investigation, police got their first big lead because the first clue was found. Jill Meagher's handbag and all of her possessions were found just ditched in a random street not far away from where she lived. And this was troubling to police for more reasons than the obvious. So obviously this is not a good sign that her handbag has been found, but she is nowhere to be found. It seems that something must have happened here. Something bad must have happened. Well, that's what it would mean in a normal true crime case, but that's not exactly what happened here because so this bag was found on the 3rd day of the investigation. But like I said, they'd been doing searches for days on that street as well, and there was no handbag there before. So this whole time it hadn't been there, and then 3 days into the investigation, Jill Meagher's handbag turns up with all of her belongings inside it, just on a random street. So this led police to theorise that whoever had put it there was trying to ditch evidence. And it was at this point in the case that police officially shifted this investigation from a missing persons investigation to a homicide case. One of the next things police did was try to gather as much CCTV footage as they possibly could from Jill's walk home. Now, luckily, she walked past a lot of shops on her way home, and shops tend to have security footage on the outside just in case they get robbed or whatever. So there was quite a bit of camera footage that police could pull, and this meant that it would be one hell of a job looking through hours and hours and hours of CCTV footage. But eventually, it paid off because they found something. At first, you can see a man in a blue hoodie kind of loitering outside this one shop, and then a few minutes later, Jill Meagher walks into frame, and it seems that this blue hoodie man strikes up a conversation with her. This was at 1:42 a.m, and this is the last sighting of Jill Meagher, the last known sighting of her. So police were super interested to know who this blue hoodie man was. He was a potential suspect, if not a suspect, a person of interest. Even if he had nothing to do with Jill's disappearance, he was still the last person to see her. So they start ruling out the obvious people. It wasn't any of her co-workers. They'd all already left her at this point. It wasn't anyone that police knew, and honestly, I don't think Jill knew this man either. You can kind of tell from her body language in the clip that she's kind of standoffish. She doesn't seem very comfortable and open with this man. And especially, remember, she'd been drinking that night, and I don't know about you guys, but when I'm tipsy, I am everyone's best friend. I am talking to everyone. I'm willing to have a conversation with anyone. And the fact that she was tipsy and still quite standoffish with this man suggests that she really was quite uncomfortable. I don't know, maybe she's not like me when she's had a drink, but I don't know, I think that kind of stuck out to me as well. I think it just says a lot about the vibe of this conversation and the vibe of this interaction that she had with this man. She's kind of keeping a distance. He tries to walk beside her and she steps away. You know, you can really sense the feel. So police keep watching all of this CCTV footage. Jill and the blue hoodie man end up walking out of frame, and they don't come back past this one particular shop. So police are looking at the cameras from outside all the other shops, and then one of them noticed something really quite scary. On one camera, a bit further up the road, Jill is seen walking past just alone. Everything seems fine. And then a few minutes later, the blue hoodie man is seen running after her. And after seeing this, police were even more certain that this was probably a homicide investigation that they were looking at, because this man seemed violent and aggressive towards Jill in these clips. They feared what he could have done to her. He could have kidnapped her, killed her. So police started doing a bunch of public appeals. They wanted to try and get as much information out of the public as they possibly could. You know, potential witnesses, people that might have seen or heard something. They particularly appealed about the blue hoodie man, you know, asking if anyone recognized him or if they knew who it could be. And they were asking about Jill's bag that was found in the road, since it was just mysteriously ditched there 3 days after she went missing. And they would get an answer to this, although it wasn't the answer that they were expecting. A member of the public came forward to tell the police that they had put Jill Meagher's handbag there, just in the street. It wasn't a killer, it wasn't an abductor, it was just a guy. Apparently, so this is what this man told police. He said that he had been walking down this street, the street where the bag was found. He'd been walking down that street early on Saturday morning. So Jill had gone missing Friday night, well, the early hours of Saturday morning. And the following morning, when it was like time for people to be waking up, he walked down the street and saw the bag, which is very concerning for this investigation in itself. By the way, this missing woman's bag was still ditched in this street. But this guy didn't know that. He didn't know that Jill was missing. He supposedly just saw this handbag on the floor and thought, oh, someone's dropped their bag, or they've lost it, or it's, you know, he thought, oh, whoever's bag this is gonna want this bag back. So he picked it up and he took it home with him. He said that he was just keeping it safe and he was going to try and find the owner of this bag. And actually he knew who it belonged to because he'd gone inside and looked at the, her lanyard was in there from her job and it said Jill Meagher on it. So we knew who this bag belonged to. The guy said that he kept this bag at his house for a couple of days and he was just trying to find the owner. And then one day he saw the news, saw that Jill Meagher was missing, recognized the name and the face from the lanyard inside the bag and thought, oh my God, I am holding a missing woman's bag. He said he just panicked, and he said that even though there was an innocent explanation for why he had it, he was still worried that if he was found in possession of a missing woman's bag, they would suspect him of having something to do with her disappearance. Obviously. He didn't really know what to do, and so he just took the bag back to where he found it and left it on the floor. Didn't take it to police, didn't even report it in the first place, which makes me kind of suspicious of this guy's story. I don't know, a lot of people don't seem suspicious of this, but I kind of am. I'm gonna be honest, I think he was stealing it. I think he was stealing the bag. I think he saw this bag on the floor and thought, mine, I'll be taking that home. He made no attempt to try and contact Jill or to try and get this bag back to its rightful owner until, yeah, he saw the news, and then I think he did panic, realizing that he'd stolen a missing girl's bag, and he didn't want to admit that he'd stolen it from the street, and so he just went and put it back. That's my theory anyway. Like I said, he told police that he was planning on trying to get it back to Jill, so. Anyway, whatever the reason being, at least police have an explanation now, and they have the bag as well, which is even better. But what police didn't have an explanation for was why it was there in the first place. It was still ditched there by someone in the early hours of the morning. Was it put there by someone that had done something to Jill? Had Jill dropped it herself as part of a struggle, or as she was running away from someone? Police felt that whatever the explanation was, this road, this street where the bag was found, was going to be quite important to the investigation. And so they started a bunch of searches, particularly of that street, but the surrounding area as well. That being said, it had been a good few days since her disappearance at this point in time, and people had obviously been walking up and down that street for the past few days. So anything that they did find, any potential clues on that street, they couldn't be 100% sure that they were like clues, you know? But they did find a couple of things that they do believe belonged to Jill Meagher. There was a pen that was ABC branded, the place where she worked. That was found like just a bit further up the road. And then a little bit further up than that was a packet of cigarettes. The same cigarettes that Jill smokes, which is why they thought both of them belonged to her. And if they did belong to her, which it's kind of likely, if they did belong to her, then does that signify even more of a struggle that took place all the way up the road? Or maybe she'd been running and these things were like flying out of her bag or flying out of her pockets or something. Either way, this street was very important to the investigation, and so searches were going on there for quite some time. In the meantime, other police had managed to get hold of Jill Meagher's phone records. Now, this was kind of hard to do because they didn't have the phone, so they had to get in contact with the network company. They had to pull all the data and then send it over to police. So they got it a few days into the investigation, and the data that they were most interested in was like location data, where her phone had been at different points during the night that she disappeared. And they found that around 4 a.m. on the Saturday morning, Jill's phone was going up a highway. So her bag was ditched not far from where she lived, but her phone was on the move. And this was a really, really useful lead, actually, because this meant that police could pull all of the CCTV footage from that highway around the time that Jill's phone was driving up it, and they could see what cars were there. All of these cars that they saw on the CCTV in this particular time window were all suspects in this case at this point in time. So they were noting down every single license plate that drove past in a certain window, and they were planning to look into every single one. They started typing in these license plates on the database, and they were taking note of the drivers, and then they were looking into the drivers and seeing if they seemed like a suspect. And that was when they found one person in particular. One of these drivers was a man in his 40s. They found his name from his license plate and then put his name in the system, and they found that he had a lengthy criminal history, a violent criminal history, specifically towards women. Sexual crimes towards women mostly. His name was Adrian Ernest Bailey, a 41-year-old tradesman from the Brunswick area, and like I said, he was very well known to police. He'd been jailed already in 2002 for 12 separate incidents of rape on 5 different sex workers. 5 different sex workers that he had repeatedly raped. For this, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison, but he only served 8 years of that, which got him out of prison just a couple of years before this case takes place. And actually, in 2012, when this did happen, Adrian was still on parole for all of those rape charges. But that wasn't all. That barely even scratches the surface. Let's go back to the first crime that he is known to have committed. When he was 18 years old, he raped one of his little sister's 16-year-old friends. A year after that, he attempted to rape 2 more girls, and with one of them, he even threatened to kill her. These were all teenage girls, by the way, all under the age of 18. Some of his victims were 18 and over, but a lot of them were children. The girl that he had threatened to kill was actually a hitchhiker that he had picked up and essentially kidnapped. He drove her out to like a remote area against her will, and that was where he started attacking her. So as soon as police read all of this on the database, with all of these previous crimes in mind, they set their sights on Adrian Bailey. He was suspect number 1. They immediately went down to his house and actually arrested him. They were that sure that they were onto the right guy. They arrested him on suspicion of Jill Meagher's murder, and they hadn't even found a body. So he was transported to the police station for questioning. Meanwhile, a bunch of officers stayed back at his home and searched it for any initial clues. And in his bedroom, they found a blue hoodie, identical to the one that blue hoodie guy was wearing on the CCTV footage. They also found a smashed up SIM card inside his house. And while they didn't know whose SIM card this was, it seemed suspicious that it was smashed up, and so they decided to collect it, take it back to the police station, and try and figure out whose it was. But that was going to take a little while to investigate. In the meantime, Adrian Bailey was transported to the police station and taken for an interrogation, and he seemed pretty calm and confident. He didn't seem like stressed or nervous or anything. He was very relaxed answering the questions, and he insisted that he had no idea who Jill was. He'd never met her. He had no idea what had happened to her. The only things that he said he knew about Jill was what he'd seen in the news. Obviously, everyone had seen it in the news for the last few days. This was a huge, huge case in Australia. Police really weren't getting anywhere with him in this interrogation. He wasn't wavering from, I had nothing to do with it. I don't know who she is. I've never met her before. But as the hours had been going by, other police officers outside of that questioning room had been compiling a crap ton of evidence against this man already. Of course, there was the blue hoodie that was like the biggest piece of evidence in this case so far. They'd also seized his mobile phone when they arrested him, and they were able to check his phone records, his location records on the night of Jill's disappearance. Turns out his phone was in exactly the same location as Jill's the whole time, going up this highway together. So they practically had proof that he was with Jill on the night that she disappeared. And they told him that. They were like, there is no point in lying. We have the proof right here. And what's more, they'd managed to get in contact with the network of that smashed up SIM card, and they were able to tell police that this was Jill Meagher's SIM card. So they presented all of this evidence that they had against him to Adrian Bailey, and all of a sudden, his demeanour completely changed. He was no longer that cool, calm, collected, confident person that he was a few minutes ago. Now he was anxious, distressed, holding his head in his hands. He didn't want to look at police officers. And then he broke down and confessed to the murder of Jill Meagher. His exact words were, "I want to get it off my chest. I fucked up, all right." He said, "Man, I should be in jail anyway, you know? I shouldn't have been let out last time, simple. And I say that in hopes that someone hears that and they don't ever let me out again. How many chances does a person need?" So this man is seemingly self-aware that his behaviour has been well and truly evil since the age of 18. He just keeps committing these heinous acts and he feels like he can't control it. He can't stop himself. He feels like he needs someone else to step in and stop him from hurting people. So let's start out at the beginning of the story, shall we? Of course, when Adrian confessed, he gave police his full version of events. So we'll start from, well, earlier that night. Adrian had also been out on that same street in Brunswick with his friends and actually with his girlfriend. He had a girlfriend. But at one point in the night, Adrian and his girlfriend fell out. Now, I think Adrian was a very jealous man, a very insecure, possessive man. And at one point, he accused his girlfriend of flirting with one of his friends. He starts having a go at his girlfriend for it, and she tries to defend himself, but this wasn't the first time they'd had this argument. They'd had this argument hundreds of times before, and she knew that she couldn't win it. She'd never won it before, she wasn't going to win it tonight, and so she decides to just leave. She didn't want to be at the pub anymore. He'd ruined the night. She just wanted to go home. So she did. She got up and started to leave, and he starts begging her to stay. And she's like, "No, I'm off home." She goes home and he's still calling her and texting her saying, "Oh, please come back. I'm sorry." Like he's trying to apologize. And she's like, "No, I'm off home. Bye." In the end, Adrian stops trying to get her back out. He stays out drinking with his mates, but they know that he is still really, really worked up over this argument that he's just had. He's really angry about it. He keeps talking about it, keeps calling his girlfriend names, and he's drinking more and more. He's getting more and more drunk, and as he's getting more and more drunk, he's getting more and more angry. And then at the end of the night, Adrian and all of his friends say goodbye to each other at the pub and go their separate ways to go home. But Adrian didn't want to go home because, like I say, he was really angry at his girlfriend. He didn't want to be back there with her, but he didn't know what he wanted to do. It was the early hours of the morning. He had nowhere to go, really. And so Adrian just starts walking, just walking the streets. And it was then when he was just pacing the streets of Brunswick when he bumps into Jill Meagher outside that shop. And he struck up a conversation with her. That's what we saw on the CCTV footage. He said that he was really quite drunk at the time when he struck up a conversation with Jill. He was just trying to be friendly, and apparently, at first, she was friendly back. She entertained the conversation, spoke to him for a sec. But at some point during this interaction, Jill had had enough. I don't know what it was that made her suddenly switch, but apparently she did. Something happened that made her pull away from this man and not want to talk to him anymore. I read in one or two sources that Adrian tried to make a move on her, like tried to grab her and kiss her, and obviously she's got a husband, she's not interested, and so that was what kind of made her suddenly dislike this man. Other sources think she just... this is a drunk man that's trying to talk to her in the middle of the street. Any woman would be freaked out. So, I don't know, whatever the situation, apparently she suddenly went quite cold and distant. And Adrian didn't take this very well. He perceives this as her being rude, as her rejecting him, as her being mean to him. So after this, Jill leaves and walks off, carries on walking home. And for a while, Adrian just kind of stays outside the shop. He's still just like pottering about a bit, but he's still angry about the interaction that he just had. He's going over it again and again in his head, getting more and more worked up until he decides that Jill needs to pay for the way that she just treated him. So he turns around, runs after her. We see him run after her on CCTV footage. He grabs her, ambushes her, and drags her into an alleyway just off the main road. First, he raped Jill Meagher and then proceeded to strangle her to death with his own bare hands. Within a few minutes of meeting this woman, he had taken her life. Adrian was then left with a dead body, and he says it was at this point he realised what he'd done, he panicked, and he knew that he was going to have to do something about this body. He couldn't just leave it there in the alleyway. He wanted to get rid of this body in a way that no one would ever find it, and he decided that the best way to do that would be to bury it. But there was one issue. How on earth was he going to transport this body to a place where he could bury it. They were on a street. There was nowhere he could bury her here. The only thing that Adrian could do was leave Jill's body in the alleyway and just kind of pray that no one stumbled across it, while he ran home, got in his car. When he drove back to the alleyway, Jill's body was still there. No one had found it yet. And so he loaded her body into the boot of his car and then just drove. He had no plan on where he was going to drive. He just drove and drove and drove. He was going for about 30 minutes until he found a dirt track that he felt was a good enough place. It was isolated enough. It was out of the way where he could hide the body here, and he didn't think it would be found. When he'd gone to pick up his car, he'd also picked up a shovel. So he got Jill's body out of the boot and buried her in a very, very shallow grave. And when I say shallow, I mean insanely shallow. Like if there would have been heavy rain or like a storm or something, the mud would have just come straight off her. She wasn't even a foot underground properly. When Adrian was done burying Jill's body, the sun had already started coming up. It was morning now, and so he knew that he had to be quick covering his tracks. First, he takes his car and gets it fully cleaned, like deep cleaned inside and out. He wanted to get rid of any trace that Jill had ever been in that car. He even got all of his tyres replaced with a completely different kind of tyre. Just in case he'd left tyre marks at the scene of the crime, he wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be a match to his car. He'd actually thought this through quite well. He'd already smashed up her SIM card, like as he was driving to bury her body. So that was already taken care of, but he forgot to get rid of it. Obviously, we know that police found it in his house. I think he just left it in the pocket of his jeans or something. And so when police searched his house, of course they found that SIM card. So actually, he didn't think things through as well as I said he did. Police believe that the motive for this murder, well, it was obviously sexual in nature, but a bit more of a specific motive. Police have a couple of theories. They think that maybe Jill threatened to call the police on Adrian Bailey. Maybe he did make a move on her. Maybe she was scared for her safety and she said she would call the police, and he panicked and killed her to silence her. And it does kind of make sense with the CCTV footage, because it looks like she's trying to like step away from him and stuff. It seems like he could have been harassing her. Alternatively, a different motive that's even scarier than that one is that maybe the thought of murdering Jill Meagher sexually aroused Adrian Bailey. It's clear that he was in that state of mind when he approached her, if you know what I mean. So maybe the thought of killing her was what got him off, was what like got him in that state of mind. But anyway, that brings us back to the timeline. Adrian Bailey has confessed to this crime, and he was charged with the rape and murder of Jill Meagher less than a week after she disappeared. That same evening, police took Adrian out to the dirt track where he'd buried Jill's body so that he could locate it and they could retrieve it. And finally now her family had a little bit of closure. They had her body back. They could give her a proper funeral. Meanwhile, Adrian Bailey is being held in police custody until his trial. And one day, one of the officers caught Adrian trying to take his own life. He'd said time and time again, like in his questionings and when he'd just been like chilling in custody, he had said time and time again that he wishes they would just bring back the death penalty before his sentencing. He just wanted to die. He knew that his life was over now. After what he'd done, his life was over, and he thought there was no point living anymore because he thought he was just going to go to jail for the rest of his life. And he really didn't want to deal with the consequences of his own actions. He didn't want to go to jail for what he'd done. And so he tried to take his life this one time, although I don't think he attempted again after that at all. The trial went ahead in March of 2013, and Adrian Bailey shocked everyone at his initial court hearing when he entered his plea of guilty to rape, but not guilty to murder, even though he had literally confessed to police that he murdered Jill Meagher. He was now saying that he was not guilty. I have no idea what his intention was with this, whether he genuinely thought he might be able to get away with it, or whether he was just sadistically prolonging this whole ordeal for everyone involved. Because even though Bailey kind of seemed angry at himself and his actions, in his confession he seemed really mad at himself for doing this again, for assaulting a woman again. He said he really wanted to be locked up, he wanted to be like away from society, he wanted someone to stop him doing it. He acted like he was remorseful, but actually, I really don't think he was. Because some of the things that this man has said and done show such sadism. I mean, apart from the obvious, rape and murder and kidnap, all horrific things, yes. But it's even in the little things he does. So one of the sex workers that he raped, that he got all that time in jail for, when he did it, he just laughed in her face. He even gave her like a little fake apology, like a sarcastic apology. And then he was like, nah, I'd do it again though. It was like he took pleasure in taunting his victims and prolonging their suffering. So I really wouldn't put it past him that maybe that's what he was trying to do with this plea deal. He was trying to just stress everyone out and upset Jill's family in the aftermath of this. I think he just liked seeing his victims in pain. He liked upsetting people, and it didn't matter what form that came in, he just liked causing misery for others. Actually, after a week or two, Adrian Bailey ended up changing that plea now to guilty. So he pled guilty to everything, which meant it didn't need to go to trial. All that was left to do was sentence him. Bailey was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years before he will be eligible for parole, but it doesn't stop there. This case does not stop there. In the aftermath of this, police had multiple women come forward saying that Adrian Bailey had assaulted them too, raped them, kidnapped them. For whatever reason, all of these victims hadn't reported it at the time. Maybe they were too scared, maybe they didn't know who their attacker was, they didn't see him very well, so they didn't feel like there was any point reporting it. For whatever reason, none of these women had ever come forward until now, when they're seeing Adrian Bailey's face on the news, he's been arrested, he's sent to prison for the rest of his life. And this either pushed the women to go forward and give their stories, or now they finally felt safe enough to. Now that he was behind bars and he wouldn't be able to come back for them, these women were finally ready to report their abuse. He was charged, tried, and sentenced to an extra good few years for a bunch of these rape cases and kidnapping cases, different assault cases that came out after Jill Meagher's murder. Adrian Bailey had been an awful man all his life, and none of this should have ever happened, especially not the murder of Jill Meagher, because this man was on parole at the time. There's a reason we have parole, and isn't it so that stuff like this doesn't happen? Obviously, he wasn't being monitored well enough. Obviously. But that is all I have on this case. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again to Cctv for sponsoring this video. Remember, you can go to cctv.com/Eleanor. The link is down below in the description, and a 15% discount will be automatically applied at checkout for you. A huge thank you to all of my channel members for supporting the channel and helping me decide the cases that I cover. All of my tier 2 members are on screen right now, so thank you so much. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up down below. That would really help me out. If you want to watch another one of my videos, there you go. If you want to subscribe to my channel, click the little circle. It's got my face in it and you can subscribe. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!